Hello and welcome to the Enjoy the Book of Life audio library. Humility, the Beauty of Holiness by Andrew Murray. Chapter 4. Humility in the Teaching of Jesus. Learn of me, for I am meek and lowly of heart. Matthew 11:29. Whosoever will be chief among you, let him be your servant, even as the Son of Man came to serve. Matthew 20, verse 27. We have seen humility in the life of Christ, as he laid open his heart to us. Let us listen to his teaching. There we shall hear how he speaks of it, and how far he expects men, and especially his disciples, to be humble as he was. Let us carefully study the passages, which I can scarce do more than quote, to receive the full impression of how often and how earnestly he taught it. It may help us to realize what he asks of us. Number 1. Look at the commencement of his ministry. In the Beatitudes with which the Sermon on the Mount opens, he speaks, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." The very first words of his proclamation of the kingdom of heaven reveal the open gate through which alone we enter. The poor, who have nothing in themselves, to them the kingdom comes. The meek, who seek nothing in themselves, theirs the earth shall be. The blessings of heaven and earth are for the lowly. For the heavenly and the earthly life, humility is the secret of blessing. Number 2. Learn of me, for I am meek and lowly of heart, and ye shall find rest for your souls. Jesus offers himself as teacher. He tells us what the Spirit both is, which we shall find in him as teacher, and which we can learn and receive from him. Meekness and lowliness is the one thing he offers us. In it we shall find perfect rest of soul. Humility is to be our salvation. Number 3. The disciples had been disputing who would be the greatest in the kingdom, and had agreed to ask the Master. Luke 9:46 and Matthew 18, verse 3. He set a child in their midst and said, "Whoever shall humble himself as this little child shall be exalted." Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? The question is indeed a far-reaching one. What will be the chief distinction in the heavenly kingdom? The answer? None but Jesus would have given. The chief glory of heaven, the true heavenly mindedness, the chief of the graces, is humility. He that is least among you, the same shall be great. Number 4. The sons of Zebedee had asked Jesus to sit on his right and left, the highest place in the kingdom. Jesus said it was not his to give, but the Father's, who would give it to those for whom it was prepared. They must not look or ask for it. Their thought must be of the cup and the baptism of humiliation. And then he added, "Whosoever will be chief among you, let him be your servant, even as the Son of Man came to serve." Humility, as it is the mark of Christ the heavenly, will be the one standard of glory in heaven. The lowliest is the nearest to God. The primacy in the church is promised to the humblest. Number 5. Speaking to the multitude and the disciples, of the Pharisees and their love of the chief seats, Christ said once again, Matthew 33, verse 11, "He that is greatest among you shall be your servant." Humiliation is the only ladder to honor in God's kingdom. Number 6. On another occasion in the house of a Pharisee, he spoke the parable of the guest who would be invited to come up higher, Luke 14, 1-11, and added, "For whosoever exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted." The demand is inexorable. There is no other way. Self-abasement alone will be exalted. Number 7. After the parable of the Pharisee and the publican, Christ spake again. Luke 18, verse 14. Everyone that exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. In the temple and presence and worship of God, everything is worthless that is not pervaded by deep, true humility towards God and men. Number 8. After washing the disciples' feet, Jesus said in John 13, verse 14, If I then, the Lord and Master, have washed your feet, ye also ought to wash one another's feet. The authority of command and example, every thought, either of obedience or conformity, make humility the first and most essential element of discipleship. Number 9. At the Holy Supper table, the disciples still disputed who should be greatest. Luke 22, verse 26. Jesus said, He that is greatest among you, let him be as the younger, and he that is chief, as he that doth serve. I am among you as he that serveth. The path in which Jesus walked, and which he opened up for us, the power and spirit in which he wrought out salvation, and to which he saves us, is ever the humility that makes me the servant of all. How little this is preached, how little it is practiced, how little the lack of it is felt or confessed. I do not say how few attain to it, some recognizable measure of likeness to Jesus in his humility, but how few ever think of making it a distinct object of continual desire or prayer. How little the world has seen it, how little has it been seen, even in the inner circle of the church. Whosoever will be chief among you, let him be your servant. Would God that it might be given us to believe that Jesus means this. We all know what the character of a faithful servant or slave implies. Devotion to the master's interests, thoughtful study and care to please him, delight in his prosperity and honor and happiness. There are servants on earth in whom these dispositions have been seen, and to whom the name of servant has never been anything but a glory. To how many of us has it not been a new joy in the Christian life to know that we may yield ourselves as servants, as slaves to God, and to find that his service is our highest liberty, the liberty from sin and self. We need now to learn another lesson, that Jesus calls us to be servants of one another, and that, as we accept it heartily, this service too will be a most blessed one, a new and fuller liberty too from sin and self. At first it may appear hard. This is only because of the pride which still counts itself something. If once we learn that to be nothing before God is the glory of the creature, the spirit of Jesus, the joy of heaven, we shall welcome with our whole heart the discipline we may have in serving even those who try or vex us. When our own heart is set upon this, the true sanctification, we shall study each word of Jesus on self-abasement with new zest, and no place will be too low, and no stooping too deep, and no service too mean or too long continued, if we may but share and prove the fellowship with him who spake, I am among you as he that serveth. Brethren, here is the path to the higher life, down, lower down. This was what Jesus ever said to the disciples who were thinking of being great in the kingdom, and of sitting on his right hand and his left. Seek not, ask not for exaltation. That is God's work. Look to it that you abase and humble yourselves, and take no place before God or man, but that of servant. That is your work. Let that be your one purpose and prayer. God is faithful. Just as water ever seeks and fills the lowest place, so the moment God finds the creature abased and empty, his glory and power flow in to exalt and to bless. He that humbleth himself, that must be our one care, shall be exalted. That is God's care. But his mighty power, and in his great love he will do it. Men sometimes speak as if humility and meekness would rob us of what is noble and bold and manlike. Oh, that all would believe that this is the nobility of the kingdom of heaven, that this is the royal spirit that the King of heaven displayed, that this is godlike to humble oneself and become the servant of all. This is the path to the gladness and the glory of Christ's presence ever in us, his power ever resting on us. Jesus, the meek and lowly one, calls us to learn of him the path to God. Let us study the words we have been reading until our heart is filled with the thought, my one need is humility, and let us believe that what he shows, he gives. What he is, he imparts. As the meek and lowly one, he will come in and dwell in the longing heart. Chapter 5. Humility in the disciples of Jesus. Let him that is chief among you be as he that doth serve. Luke 22, verse 26. We have studied humility in the person and teaching of Jesus. Let us now look for it in the circle of his chosen companions, the 12 apostles. If, in the lack of it, we find in them the contrast between Christ and men is brought out more clearly, it will help us to appreciate the mighty change which Pentecost wrought in them and prove how real our participation can be in the perfect triumph of Christ's humility over the pride Satan had breathed into man. In the text quoted from the teaching of Jesus, we have already seen what the occasions were on which the disciples had proved how entirely wanting they were in the grace of humility. Once they had been disputing by the way which of them should be the greatest. Another time the sons of Zebedee with their mother had asked for the first places, the seat on the right hand and the left. And later on at the supper table on the last night, there was again a contention which should be accounted the greatest. Not that there were not moments when they indeed humbled themselves before their Lord. So it was with Peter when he cried out, "Depart from me, O Lord, for I am a sinful man." So too with the disciples when they fell down and worshipped him who had stilled the storm. But such occasional expressions of humility only bring out into stronger relief what was the habitual tone of their mind, as shown in the natural and spontaneous revelation given at other times of the place and the power of self. The study of the meaning of all this will teach us most important lessons. First, how much there may be of earnest and active religion while humility is still sadly wanting. See it in the disciples. There was in them fervent attachment to Jesus. They had forsaken all for him. The Father had revealed to them that he was the Christ of God. They believed in him. They loved him. They obeyed his commandments. They had forsaken all to follow him. When others went back, they clave to him. They were ready to die with him. But deeper down than all this, there was a dark power of the existence and the hideousness of which they were hardly conscious, which had to be slain and cast out ere they could be the witness of the power of Jesus to save. It is even so still. We may find professors and ministers, evangelists and workers, missionaries and teachers, in whom the gifts of the Spirit are many and manifest, and who are the channels of blessing to multitudes, but of whom, When the testing time comes or closer intercourse gives fuller knowledge, it is only too painfully manifest that the grace of humility as an abiding characteristic is scarce to be seen. All tends to confirm the lesson that humility is one of the chief and the highest graces, one of the most difficult of attainment, one to which our first and chiefest efforts ought to be directed, one that only comes in power when the fullness of the Spirit makes us partakers of the indwelling Christ and lives within us. Second, how impotent all external teaching and all personal effort is to conquer pride or give the meek and lowly heart. For 3 years, the disciples had been in the training school of Jesus. He had told them what the chief lesson was. He wished to teach them. Learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart. Time after time, he had spoken to them, to the Pharisees, to the multitude, of humility as the only path to the glory of God. He had not only lived before them as the Lamb of God in his divine humility, he had more than once unfolded to them the inmost secret of his life. The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. I am among you as one that serveth. He had washed their feet and told them they were to follow his example. And yet all had availed but little. At the Holy Supper, there was still the contention as to who should be greatest. They had doubtless often tried to learn his lessons, and firmly resolved not again to grieve him, but all in vain, to teach them and us the much-needed lesson that no outward instruction, not even of Christ himself, no argument, however convincing, no sense of the beauty of humility, however deep, no personal resolve or effort, however sincere and earnest, can cast out the devil of pride. When Satan casts out Satan, it is only to enter afresh in a mightier, though more hidden power. Nothing can avail but this, that the new nature in its divine humility be revealed in power to take the place of the old, to become as truly our very nature as that ever was. Third, it is only by the indwelling of Christ in his divine humility that we become truly humble. We have our pride from another, from Adam. We must have our humility from another too. Pride is ours, and rules in us with such terrible power because it is ourself, our very nature. Humility must be ours in the same way. It must be our very self, our very nature. As natural and easy as it is to be proud, it must be, it will be, to be humble. The promise is, where, even in the heart, sin abounded, grace did abound more exceedingly. All Christ's teaching of his disciples and all their vain efforts were the needful preparation for his entering into them in divine power to give and be in them what he had taught them to desire. In his death he destroyed the power of the devil. He put away sin and effected an everlasting redemption. In his resurrection, he received from the Father an entirely new life, the life of man in the power of God, capable of being communicated to men and entering the renewing and filling their lives with his divine power. In his ascension, he received the Spirit of the Father, through whom he might do what he could not do while upon earth, make himself one with those he loved, actually live their life for them, so that they could live before the Father in a humility like his, because it was himself who lived and breathed in them. And on Pentecost he came and took possession. The work of preparation and conviction, the awakening of desire and hope which his teaching had effected, was perfected by the mighty change that Pentecost wrought. And the lives and the epistles of James and Peter and John bear witness that all was changed, and that the spirit of the meek and suffering Jesus had indeed possession of them. What shall we say to these things? Among my readers, I am sure there is more than one class. There may be some who have never yet thought very specially of the matter and cannot at once realize its immense importance as a life question for the church and its every member. There are others who have felt condemned for their shortcomings and have put forth very earnest efforts, only to fail and be discouraged. Others, again, may be able to give joyful testimony of spiritual blessing and power, and yet there has never been the needed conviction of what those around them still see as wanting. And still others may be able to witness that in regard to this grace too the Lord has given deliverance and victory, while he has taught them how much they still need and may expect out of the fullness of Jesus. To whichever class we belong, may I urge the pressing need there is for our all seeking a still deeper conviction of the unique place that humility holds in the religion of Christ, and the utter impossibility of the church or the believer being what Christ would have them be, as long as his humility is not recognized as his chief glory, his first command, and our highest blessedness. Let us consider how deeply, how far the disciples were advanced while this grace was still so terribly lacking, and let us pray to God that other gifts may not so satisfy us that we never grasp the fact that the absence of this grace is the secret cause why the power of God cannot do its mighty work. It is only where we, like the Son, truly know and show that we can do nothing of ourselves that God will do all. It is when the truth of an indwelling Christ takes the place it claims in the experience of believers that the church will put on her beautiful garments and humility be seen in her teachers and members as the beauty of holiness.